What's going on, guys? It's PJ and I am back with the last section of the Enneagram triads. So we already have discussed the gut triad, which would be the types 8, 9, and 1. These are called the body triads as well. And the main issue here, or the main underlying emotion here at play, is anger. Then we discuss the heart triad of the Enneagram, which would be types 2, 3, and 4. The main issue at play here is an underlying feeling of shame and an underlying sense of I am not good enough as I am. And in the last video, I discussed how each of these Enneagram types go through their own ego trips, so to speak, to figure out how best cover up and heal that wound that they feel. But again, our ego is never, and its strategies are never the best way to meet our needs. And it's only our spirit that can satisfy all of the desires of our hearts and of our being. So today we're talking about the last section, or the last triad in these series of videos, which is the head triad. This is types 5, 6, and 7. And the main issue at play, or the main underlying emotion at play here, is the emotion of fear. Now, if you look at these three emotions, anger, shame, and fear, these are some of the best foods for the ego. So the ego being the personality structure, who we think we are, but not who we are really in truth. Our truth is that we are spiritual beings having a physical form experience. But we tend to get identified with our physical form and think that we are the ego identity, who our ego says I am. So for example, our name, what we do, where we're from, all the stories that go along, feelings of inadequacy, feelings of overglorification of self, everything and anything that you can think of, ego does use, our personality structure does use to give us a sense of identity. But the truth is, and the reality that we're trying to reach with the Enneagram is, none of our needs are going to be met at the level of personality, but it's only when we go deeper than the personality, the small I, and we tap into the capital S self, capital I, that identity of us as a spiritual being, that all of our needs, we recognize that all of our needs, all of our desires, our desires for peace, for belonging, for love, for joy, for deep satisfaction, purpose, fulfillment, all those things are already met when we identify truly with who and what we are, which is a spirit having a physical human experience, and that spirit was created by a creator, by God, and that spirit has stayed through all of our trials, all of our successes, all of our tribulations. That spirit has remained the same. So when you look at these three emotions, anger, shame, and fear, that each of these triads struggle with, these three emotions are some of the most potent foods for the ego. The ego can really strengthen itself when it holds on to emotions of anger, when it holds on to emotion of shame, when it holds on to the emotion of fear. It loves fear. It feeds off of those things. So a lot of times in our childhood, these personality types that we're discussing in the Enneagram system, these feelings that belong to each of these triads, what they're saying is, one of the main messages that, or one of the main things that it means to be a part of one of these triads and experience that emotion, what it means is, in childhood, most likely there was a predominant feeling of fear if you're in the head triad, or that's when your personality started forming, because the main emotion in your childhood, which is when your personality was developing, that main emotion might have been fear. If that was the case, then it's highly likely that your personality type, your personality identity, would belong in the head triad, because the main emotion was fear. And I'm going to go more in depth into how, or what happened, or what might have caused it, and how each of these three types, types 5, type 6, and type 7, how did they respond to this emotion of fear, to this strong emotion of fear that was part of their early childhood, and what were the three strategies that each of them used, because each used a different one to overcome this feeling of fear. And so did every other type and every other triad. So if you're in the body triad and the main emotion is anger, type 8 use a different strategy to overcome that anger or face that anger or deal with that anger. Type 9 use a different one, and type 1 use a different one. And again, lastly, the heart triad. So the main emotion there is shame. And type 2 used a certain tactic to rise above that. Type 3 used a different tactic, and type 4 used a different tactic. So let's focus on the head triad today, as we're going to go a lot more in depth into how did fear create the personality structure of these types. And type 7 is going to be the most fascinating one, because type 7 is the fun-loving, the playful type of the Enneagram. So how did fear cause that reaction to happen? Because a lot of times our personality structures are actually reactions to our circumstances. So type 5, these childhood stories that I'm going to talk about, this doesn't mean that every single person that belongs to one of these types, that is one of these types, had the same childhood story, but these are kind of like the palette or the basic template childhood story that might have caused somebody to become a type 5, to become a type 6, or become a type 7. So in most of these situations with the people belonging to the head triad, there might have been a sense of fear or uncertainty in their circumstances in childhood, meaning that they might have not had a strong paternal figure, usually the father. The father is the protector figure for most of us as in childhood years. There might have been a sense that they didn't have that. They didn't have that protection. Or there might have been a situation where the circumstances of their life was really uncertain. It wasn't solid. Things were shaking. Things were moving all the time. They might have had an alcoholic father, for example, who was completely unpredictable. So, what did the type 6 decide to do in that situation? What did the type 5 person or child decide to do in that situation? And what did the type 7 decide to do? So, keep those in mind, those circumstances. For example, an alcoholic father, or in general, a very uncertain circumstance regarding one of the parents, or just society that somebody grew up in. So uncertainty, which leads to fear, was a big criteria or a big issue that these children faced. Or maybe the parental figure or the father wasn't strong enough, so they didn't feel protected by his presence. He wasn't giving the child a sense of, I'm good because dad is here, and so the child, one of these types might have decided a strategy to make up for what's missing, which is a strong paternal figure that's protecting them, making sure that they're okay, and making them feel that they're okay, that all is well, that all is taken care of, and that they're going to be good. So what did the type 5 decide to do? The first type that we're going to discuss in the head triad. The type 5 is called the thinker, it's called the intellectual, and these names kind of point to the main theme of the personality type, but they don't really describe the whole thing. So the type 5, let's say they grew up in a situation that had a lot of uncertainty. They couldn't really rely on the paternal figure, usually the dad in most families. They couldn't rely on that. So what did they decide to do? They decided to reduce their needs and hoard resources, so to speak. And the Enneagram, when I'm just saying this because I don't want you to get offended and think that I'm trying to be insulting if you are a type 5 and listening to this video. I don't want you to feel that, because of these descriptions, I'm insulting a type or glorifying another. It's never about that. Enneagram is just very straightforward, and it's because of that truth given to us in that straightforward manner, and also having a path to now, having heard the truth about ourselves, what can we do now? It gives us all of that. It gives us the truth and what to do from here forward. So the Enneagram sometimes is very abrasive. The way it presents certain types is, not super ego glorifying to hear, but nevertheless, we all need to hear the truth in order for us to grow and evolve and mature. So the type 5 individual decided to reduce their needs because they weren't sure if their needs can be met. And then hoard resources. So don't expend too much energy, don't use too much resources, and make sure that you are good with what you have. Don't try to exert too much energy or do too much and then therefore be at the mercy of not having enough resources. So for example, let's say the type 5 individual decided that the best way for me to stay safe is to get a lot of knowledge, learn a lot of information, and get all of that knowledge into my mind, into my brain. So you can say they're hoarding knowledge, they're gathering information as much as possible. And what else? Let me reduce my needs as well. So a lot of times type 5s tend to not really want to go out too much into the world, and they love to be in their own bubble with a good book, learning, because that does give them a sense of security. A lot of times they like to learn a lot of information, they like to know a lot of knowledge, a lot of different things. They like to learn a lot of different things and learn a lot about those things and really go in depth into a topic that catches their interest, because that gives them a sense of safety. I couldn't rely on my father, for example, to know the answers, so I decided to go to books and to YouTube and to these different resources and get all the answers, and I'm going to hold on to these answers and to all this information, and I'm going to reduce my needs, and that's going to keep me safe. So that's kind of in a nutshell the type 5 strategy. And again, I've said before that when I'm making these triad videos, I'm not really trying to explain in depth that personality type structure. So I'm not really trying to explain the type 5 personality structure, and I don't think that these videos that I'm making right now are enough for you to be able to identify your type if you're just hearing these types for the first time. But these videos are aimed to start giving and building the framework of the Enneagram. So, first we have the circle of the Enneagram, and then we have these 3 sections. And so I'm going through those 3 sections and talking more about the story behind those sections, not necessarily the story of the type itself in depth. There's a lot of good information online, and a good starting place for learning more about the types, which is a free place or a free resource, is called Enneagram Institute. They have a lot of awesome information on their website, so check that out. They also have a test that you can take, which is phenomenal. It's one of the best tests that I've taken from the Enneagram, or on the Enneagram topic, and it's $12, but it's definitely one of the best ones that I've tried out. And so if you want to learn your type that way, taking a test and then it giving you a result, by all means, they have, you can try Enneagram Institute. They have a phenomenal resource there. But I think that one of the best ways to learn the Enneagram is to learn all the types. Again, Enneagram Institute, learn all the types, read all the types, and then catch yourself, watch yourself, observe yourself non-judgmentally as you go throughout your day, as you interact with different people, as you go through different situations. See how you're responding. Are you responding like a type 5, or are you responding more like a type 2? Do you usually tend to avoid conflict like a type 9? Because we all have these types, but one of these types is our predominant strategy to go into the world. So check those out. Check that website out. I think it will be really helpful in order to learn more about the types. But let's move on in the second type in this triad, and it's each triad has one type in the center of it. So 5, 6, and 7, the type in the center is 6. And what that really usually shows is that that type really struggles with the issue of that triad. So in this case, fear, the most. And so the type 6 is called the loyalist or the skeptic, And the type 6s are the people who might have had very, very, very uncertain childhood situations. And in order to thrive and survive, really, and then maybe possibly thrive also in that situation, they had to become very problem thinking oriented. Like, what could go wrong? Constantly ask themselves, instead of like hoping for the best, like always thinking and preparing for the worst. Not even like hoping for the best necessarily, just like I just gonna make sure that I think about everything that could possibly go wrong in my surroundings, and how can I adapt myself and maneuver in a way that the fear that I feel, the uncertainty that I feel, that I can supplement that. I can work with that somehow. And the best way that they thought, especially as a child, was, okay, if I really figure out and constantly think about every single thing that can go wrong and prepare for that, then I'm good. I'm golden. And I feel like the doomsday preparedness people, that sometimes they make shows about, that kind of is a type 6 mentality. And sometimes those people get the last laugh because they were preparing for problems that nobody else saw. And that actually is one of the strengths of type 6, in terms that they can see problems where other people might overlook. So if you have a type 6 in an organization, in a business, they might seem like a buzzkill sometimes, because they will point out a problem in an idea or in a proposal, in a plan, that everybody else wants to just not really look at it, just get to getting the job done. But that person can say, hey, no, there's something, this is going to lead to a problem, this is going to lead to a future disaster. Now, good leaders can listen to that and look into that, because a lot of times these type 6s the people of type 6 personality type have really thought about this situation, have thought everything that can go wrong thoroughly. And so the leader can benefit from listening to that advice and looking into it and see how they can make the plan better, make it more effective, make it fail-proof as much as possible. Now, that can also be taken too far. The type 6 personality type might become so problem-focused that they always are finding things that can go wrong in any situation. And guess what? If there's one thing that 2020 taught all of us, is that things can go wrong in a matter of seconds, in a matter of days, in a matter of, completely unexpected. In a global way, things can go wrong that we never foresaw, we didn't see coming. And so the type 6 might actually be like, I told you guys so. I knew it's coming. But at the same time, what I'm trying to say is, if you're always looking for problems, there's always something to find. And so is hope. So is blessings. So is good things in your life. You might not control the world, but you control your focus. And your focus, like my attention right now, I can look into this camera, or I can look over here, I can look over there. And so one of the last remaining freedoms that we have as human beings is choice. Because a lot of times, our personalities have hijacked us, and they're making us act in these automatic ways and act from our childhood wounds and all these automatic tendencies and personality behaviors that we have and habits. But we still have choice, and we have to remember that. And that's one of the best benefits of the Enneagram. It's trying to help us remember that we have choice. In every single moment, we can rise above our personality by observing it in action, seeing that, oh my God, my type 6 personality type is looking for problems everywhere. What if this light falls? What if this camera stops, reaching capacity and stops recording? What if that goes bad? What if this goes bad? But in this same moment, I can say, all is well. Everything's good. That doesn't mean wishful thinking, but your focus of attention, shifting your attention, that can completely change your reality. And one of the pitfalls of having a type 6 personality type and looking for problems all the time is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So by looking for problems all the time, you actually end up causing problems. So for me, for example, let's say I'm shooting this video and I'm like, wait, did I hit record? Did I hit record? And I go check, I'm like, okay, it's recording. And then I'm like, wait, is this recording? It's a mic recording? And then I check, and like next thing I know, it's, you know, 2 hours have gone by, and you know, I caused more problems. Now I'm running out of time, which is a new problem to shoot the video. And so my seeking to find problem attitude actually caused more problems and more issues for me to deal with. Now we're going to jump into the type 7 personality type. Type 7s are some of my favorite people. They're called the adventurers, and they're some of my best friends have been type 7s, and I myself am a type 9. And type 9s tend to go along with other people's plans really easily, but not usually initiate plans. But type 7s are always looking to come up with new plans, new adventures to go on, new places to go check out, new, you know, trips to plan, new festivals to go to, new concerts to go to, all those things. They always are looking for the next adventure, the next hit, the next satisfaction, so to speak. And they really are tapped into wanting to get their pleasure principle, so to speak, their pleasure seeking desire satisfied. So why is that? Let's go back to the whole idea of everything or every type in the fear triad or in the head triad of the Enneagram, the types 5, 6, and 7, their personality was shaped in reaction to fear. So how did the fun-loving, the adventure-seeking, the always looking for the next adventure, next pleasure, next dopamine hit, how did that person, how did their personality get shaped in response to fear? Now, a lot of type 7s might not be aware of this or might not necessarily agree with this, but in the situation that I spoke about earlier in childhood regarding whether there was an absent father or there was uncertainty in the environment that the child was growing up in, or you know, they just felt like they're on their own and there's no one to watch after them, or maybe the father was there but wasn't really, you know, paying attention to their needs and wants and desires and keeping them safe and so on and so forth. So the type 7 child might have felt like there's uncertainty, I'm on my own. And so if the type 5 decided to reduce its own needs and hoard information, hoard resources, hoard, you know, whatever it might be, gather a lot of things, you know, the passion of type 5s is avarice. And so they wanted to gather a lot of things, a lot of resources, while simultaneously reducing their own needs so that they can get by on little. And that's how they coped with uncertainty. That's how they coped with fear. And the type 6 became the problem seeking, the looking for problems everywhere. Their focus of attention got fixed on what can go wrong versus what is good, what is right, what is already going well here. If that's how they responded to uncertainty, that's how they responded to fear, that's how they coped. The type 7 got lost or found refuge, that's a better way to put it. They found refuge in their imagination. So let's say, I just can imagine this. A type 7 child is, let's say, they have an alcoholic father or an abusive father or just chaos in their childhood environment. So let's say the type 7 child, in its developmental stage, in its developmental years, they're in their room, they're playing with their toys, and they can hear mom and dad arguing, mom and dad yelling, maybe plates are shattering outside. So they, in that moment of fear, of chaos, of uncertainty, they take refuge in their imagination. So let's say they're playing with a dinosaur, right? And like they have some Legos and they have a dinosaur, and then they're like, in their imagination, they're like, oh my God, what if there was like a land of dinosaurs? And then they start going on this trip into like the realm of dinosaurs, and they're playing and, you know, getting so lost in that imagination that it almost becomes like real to them. But that is a refuge from the reality that is their surroundings. So that imagination of playing with these toys, you know, building Legos, going to the dinosaur land or whatever, you know, their fantasy is, that is a lot safer for them. That is a lot more fun to be in than the reality of the situation. So a lot of times type 7s grow up and they have a hard time facing problems, facing negativity, They are the overly optimistic type. So they're always looking for the half full of the glass, but never looking for any potential problems. So let's say they're, in a business situation and it's clearly sinking, and they're like, it's all good, all is well. Nothing to see here, folks. Let's move on. Let's go into this other room that's fun. Let's talk about the big projects that we're gonna make happen. All the while, they're just running out of revenue, and the ship of the whole thing is sinking, but they don't want to face that. So one of the biggest growth steps for type 7 in their journey of self-realization, evolution, all those things, awakening really, is to face the shadow, because they're the type that is most likely, nines as well though, maybe even twos, but these types are some of the most likely types to not look at the dark side, not look at the shadow. But a lot of times that shadow is what we need to face in order to allow for more light to shine in, because the shadow is really the absence of the light. So if we can shine the light of our consciousness in onto those problems, onto those aspects of ourselves, of our surrounding, of our situations in our life that we are not shining the light of consciousness on, if we can do that, we step into a much higher level of wholeness and integration. And now this aspect of us that we didn't want to face, these problems that we didn't want to look at, now we are integrating those. Now we've seen them. Now we're bringing them into love, into awareness, into light. And through doing that, we become more whole, we become more grounded, we become more genuinely happy and satisfied. So that is actually a big work for type 7s to do, because the joy of seeking pleasure, the joy or the happiness that comes from planning the next adventure, going on that next trip, going to that next concert, the pleasure that comes from that, the happiness that comes from that, that's temporary and that's going to go away. So the work that we want to do in Enneagram in general is to get to a place where our personality strategies, we truly see them as obsolete, and we realize that we have these deep needs that we want fulfilled within ourselves, that our personality is like, here's a strategy. Use this type 7 strategy to get these needs fulfilled. What are those needs? The need for security. If you're in the fear triad, one of the biggest needs for all of them in that triad is security. And again, these are all part of human needs. And some of us have a certain need more than another, but all of us have these needs nonetheless. And the way we get all of these needs solved is not listening more to what our personality suggests we should do, because if that was going to work, it would have already worked for us. The best way is to, through silencing, through stillness, through being with our presence, with our being, with our essence, really. And that sounds all super woo-woo, but what I'm saying is, when we learn to observe our personality in action, when we learn to see how it's trying to get certain deep needs that we have fulfilled, so the need for security, for example, what strategies is it presenting? And when we learn to become aware of those strategies, we see them in action. Okay, my personality is saying, if you're type 6, for example, look for problems. I see that in action, then I learn to not judge it, see that it's my personality trying to take hold, observe it, stand back, be the witness of it in action, see it, and say, I am not that personality strategy, I'm what's observing this personality strategy. And through identifying with the observer, with the watcher, with the witness, you actually end up getting all those needs that you were seeking to get with your personality fulfilled. You end up getting all those needs fulfilled by resting in your essence. Now, all of that sounds esoteric and sounds woo-woo and sounds out there until you experience it. And if we start getting common experiences of our soul, of our essence, of our spirit, not necessarily the same, we don't need the same theology. We don't need to agree on the same religion. We don't need those things. What we need is a common human experience of our essence. Because that's something we all share, no matter what color, no matter what race, no matter what religion, no matter what. We all have that ability to tap into our spirit and experience that. And really, the Enneagram is one of the most powerful tools to help us experience that, because our spirit is already there. It's already existing. It's already here. What's blocking that from our awareness, from our experience, is our personality and its tendencies and its strategies. It's trying to keep the spirit down, let the ego run the show, and the more we learn to quiet the ego, the more we understand and realize the presence of our essence. So the type 7s, they're called the Peter Pans of the Enneagram. They're always looking for fun. And the downfall there too, because again, they learn in their childhood that if I look for fun, if I go into fantasy land, and fantasy land could be, imagining something, but it could also be imagining like a future scenario, like, oh, this moment right now is boring or uncomfortable or there's chaos. So let me go into imagination. Think about that trip that I have planned to Greece in 2 months and think about how fun that would be and think about that because that's a lot more fun. So I'm going to take refuge in my imagination, and then guess what happens? What happens is you go to Greece in 2 months and you're in Greece now, but your imagination has learned to always take you out of the present moment. So now you're in the most beautiful place that you have seen, but you are not seeing it for what it is, and you're trying to escape and go somewhere else. And we all do this to some degree, but type 7s are notorious for, the next. What's the next? What's the next dopamine hit? So, I have type 7 friends that, and type 7s are actually some of the most likely types to struggle with some sort of addiction because they love that hit of dopamine, that dopamine rush, that next hit, that next fun, that next thrill. So, if they don't learn to hone that and harness, the power, because attention is and focus is power. So if our attention and focus is going towards the next hit, well, if you learn to reel that all back in and don't act on those impulses and instead be with it, we regain so much power of awareness and consciousness, and our life becomes more vibrant as it is. So we don't even need that hit. We don't even need that dopamine rush. We already are in an elevated state because our consciousness is elevated and we naturally feel high, so to speak. So we don't need that next hit. And so for the type 7s, they really need to, it's important for them to, I would say it's important for them to do the work of the Enneagram, to learn their type, to observe their tendencies, because it's their tendency for pleasure is one of the strongest of all the types. And if your pleasure seeking senses or inspiration is the highest, then you're more likely to fall into traps of constantly wanting junk food or sweets or drugs or sex or alcohol or whatever it might be. And again, we all have these tendencies, but type 7s have this tendency of fun and pleasure seeking the most. So their gift is the fact that they can look at the optimistic, the positive side of things. So if the type 6 is looking at the empty half of the glass, the type 7s are looking at the full half of the glass. So they can, I've had my type 7 friends come to me and really help me see the good in my situation, really help me see the light, so to speak. And they're so good at planning things. They're so good at bringing fun. A type 7 walks in the room and let's say everyone's super stagnant and nobody's really having fun and they're all stifled. Let's say it's a party, right? And there's music playing, but it's the music is kind of dim and everyone's trying to, have chit chat and not really dance. And then type 7 walks in and they're like, what are we doing here? Let's turn up the music. Let's get everybody dancing. Let's have fun. And they bring the fun, they bring the joy, and they bring the lightness. They bring the childhood essence and playfulness to their surroundings. So all these types, they manifest in 9 levels of health. Again, something that you can look more into on Enneagram Institute. These 9 levels of health. So the type 7 that's unhealthiest, at their unhealthiest levels or in their unhealthy range, they're completely different than a type 7 that's healthy, and the personality is not running the show. The spirit is running the show. The essence, the consciousness is running the show. But they still wear that personality. We still need our personality when we go out into the world. So, when you go out to the grocery store and you're talking to a grocery clerk and, you can't just say, yes, I am the essence of being, I am the stillness. Like they're gonna be like, who is this guy? Get this guy out of here. But we need our personality to go out into the world and use our personality as a communication device. But if we identify with our personality, that's when we get lost in the matrix, in the Maya, in the illusion of life. And so learn the Enneagram, learn to disidentify with your personality, but learn how it manifests in its highest form, in its highest level. When people say, I want to fulfill my highest potential, well, when you learn your personality's highest potential and you see that, you see how essence, how soul, how spirit can manifest through your current personality. You don't need a new personality. You don't need to become somebody else. You need to be the highest expression of yourself. And the highest expression of yourself is when your divine light is shining through you brightly for everyone to see. And through that, all your needs will be fulfilled. Everybody else, your life, the presence that you bring into everybody else's life, it's a blessing. Your light shines through you. Everyone benefits. You benefit. God loves it. God, source, whatever you want to call it, is pleased when his children manifest their highest expression, because we are created in the image of our creator, and our creator is incredible, it's phenomenal. And so when we learn to manifest that pure essence through our personality into the world, it's almost like God now has come to earth. It's like, when you encounter someone that's really living their purpose, living their authentic self, they give everybody else the permission, the love, the radiance, the joy to be themselves, to express their higher self as well. And when you look at the highest beings that have ever stepped foot on this planet, Jesus, Buddha, they had a personality still. It wasn't like they became no personality. Jesus was still Jesus from Nazareth, the carpenter. But their essence was what was shining through and out from them, into the world. So people would just come into their presence and they would just get healed and they would benefit from just being in their presence. Why? Because the spirit is moving through them and is showing itself into the world through that identity, that personality identity. So the whole work with the Enneagram is to disidentify with the personality, with the ego, and instead learn to observe it, learn to use it, but not have it run you and use you. And instead identify with the witness, identify with the conscious observer, identify with the presence, the stillness, the essence, the soul, the spirit. And from there, wear the personality lightly, go out into the world, and let your light shine into the world. Jesus said, if you have a lamp, you don't want to put that lamp under a desk where nobody benefits from its light. And I'm probably butchering this quote, but you want to put down a mountaintop. You want to put down a hilltop so that that light can show and shine out into the world so that everybody can benefit. So I really hope that you continue going along with me on this journey of Enneagram and self-discovery and self-realization, because I really believe it can be a blessing into your own life, but also I think it can be a blessing for Mother Gaia, planet Earth, because our survival is dependent on the elevation and rising of our consciousness and our awareness. And if we all do that on a collective level, it's like a tsunami wave of awareness and love that can wash the world that is in chaos and is in shambles right now. It can wash that and transmute it into the new earth, into love, into 5D consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And that's the potential that we all hold. So when each of us individually does the work becomes the gift to the world. And it shines through us. And just by our awareness being turned on, our light being turned on, that light is now shining out into the world. And the best thing you can ever do for the whole world, because people want to change the world, the best thing you can ever do for the world is to change yourself and let your light shine into the world. And just by your own consciousness elevating, what do they say? Like when the tide or an elevated tide raises all ships, or something like that. But when the ocean rises, the ocean of consciousness rises, all ships on it rise. So when we do this work, we rise everybody else with us. And right now, we are being called to awaken. We are being called to elevate, up level, and wake up, get it together, identify with our spirit, forget our ego strategies because it's not leading us to the highest fruit, to the highest outcomes, to the best world that we can live in. Identify with the spirit, let that shine through you, and your life will be a blessing to all and to yourself. So I hope that we go on this journey together and that you keep coming back. We learn more about the Enneagram, then we learn how to deal and work with the Enneagram, with our type, with our personality, and move ever more deeply into our spirit and into life, really, because a lot of times we're sleepwalking. So thank you guys so much for watching. Again, my name is PJ. I know that I can go on these rants and the energy just kind of moves where it wants to move, but I'm glad that you guys have watched this far. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and like this video. It tells me what kind of content you guys resonate with, and I can't wait to elevate with you guys and together. So I'll see you soon. 1 video a week so far, and maybe I can increase it down the road. I'll talk to you guys soon. Until then, take care. Bye.